Most of us are hearing about the Khorasan terrorist group for the first time. So we asked Homeland Security correspondent Bob Orr to tell us more about it.
Taking advantage of the lawlessness inside Syria, Khorasan, a terror cell of veteran Al-Qaeda operatives, has been working on new, hard-to-detect bombs that can be smuggled aboard airplanes. Al-Qaeda has experimented with non-metallic bombs that may be hidden in shoes, clothing, cell phones, laptops, and even tubes of toothpaste. That intelligence prompted the TSA in July to tighten security for U.S.-bound flights from 24 foreign airports. Sources say Khorasan, which takes orders from Al-Qaeda chief Ayman al-Zawahiri, includes explosives experts who may have been trained by Al-Qaeda's top bomb maker, Ibrahim al-Asiri. Asiri, who is based in Yemen, is the architect of bombs hidden in underwear and computer printers. Unlike ISIS, Khorasan is not battling for territory. Instead, sources say it's plotting external attacks against the West and recruiting American and European radicals. Western passport holders who have joined the jihad in Syria could be used to carry bombs onto planes. Lieutenant General William Mayville said the airstrikes on Khorasan disrupted an imminent plot.
The intelligence reports indicated that the Khorasan group was in the final stages of plans to execute major attacks against Western targets and potentially the U.S. homeland.
Khorasan works in tandem with Jabhat al-Nusra, Al-Qaeda's affiliate in Syria. This new web video from Nusra seems to show extensive damage from the airstrikes. And now the U.S. is trying to determine if a major Khorasan leader was killed. On Twitter, jihadis are claiming that Muhsin al-Fadli died in the bombings. Al-Fadli, once a close advisor to Osama bin Laden, is on the U.S. list of most wanted terrorists. Tonight, the U.S. government is warning about the potential for retaliatory attacks from homegrown lone wolves who may be inspired to act in the name of Al-Qaeda or ISIS. So the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security are telling police to be aware, but they tell us there's no credible specific threat, Scott, at the moment.
Bob, thanks.
In addition to its first airstrikes on the Islamic State inside Syria, the U.S. expanded its campaign against another jihadist group.
Last night we also took strikes to disrupt plotting against the United States and our allies by seasoned Al-Qaeda operatives who are known as the Khorasan Group.
The Khorasan Group? Intelligence officials say the Khorasan Group is an Al-Qaeda cell based in Syria whose goal is to attack Western countries and targets. Earlier this month, Director of National Intelligence James Clapper said Khorasan may pose as much of a danger as the Islamic State in terms of threat to the homeland. U.S. officials say they focus on bomb plots and have been eyeing attacks on American airliners, prompting the U.S. to step up airline security over the summer, asking passengers boarding some U.S.-bound flights to turn on electronic devices, including cell phones, and not allowing them to board with devices that are out of battery power. Its leadership hails from the tribal areas of Pakistan. The Pentagon says Khorasan was using Syria as a safe haven and has been setting up training camps in Syria for fighters who hold Western passports. Officials say their intent is to train militants who can avoid security checks and slip into the U.S. or Europe to mount attacks. Muhsin al-Fadli is its top leader. He's believed to be in his 30s and is a senior Al-Qaeda financier who the State Department says was among the few trusted Al-Qaeda operatives who knew in advance about the 9/11 terrorist attacks. In 2012, the U.S. offered a $7 million reward for information leading to his capture. Mr. Fadli spent years living in Iran, where officials said he helped move money and operatives for Al-Qaeda. How successful were the strikes against Khorasan? The U.S. fired Tomahawk cruise missiles at Khorasan targets, but the Pentagon says it's still assessing the impact of those strikes.
Washington and its Gulf allies are targeting the Islamic stronghold in the north of the country. More than 100 Islamic State militants and Al-Qaeda-linked fighters were reportedly killed in Tuesday's attacks, along with at least 8 civilians. Now, ISIS is a huge threat to the region and to the United States, even though many believe the terrorist group arose as a backlash to U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East. The Iraq War paved the way for a rise of Sunni extremists, and a civil war in Syria boosted Sunni extremists there. But now the Pentagon says there is an even greater threat.
This is a very dangerous group, an Al-Qaeda offshoot, as you know, and we had information, good information, that they were very actively plotting and very close to the end of that plotting and planning an attack on targets either in Europe or the U.S. homeland.
Khorasan is a new threat. It's imminent, just in case you didn't get that.
that there was an imminent threat from this splinter group, this offshoot of Al-Qaeda, if you will, the Khorasan group.
Khorasan plotting imminent attacks on the West.
Threat from the Khorasan group, Al-Qaeda veterans known as the Khorasan group,
to attack U.S. and Western interests.
A week ago, no one ever heard of this terror group, but now we do. And this is what we know. It's a group believed to have broken apart from Al-Qaeda. Some say it's even worse. There are only 50 members, and their specialty is bomb-making, according to U.S. intelligence. Khorasan's leader is also known, and again, was apparently coordinating attacks on the U.S. and its allies. Joining us in the now is Kevork Almasyan, academic and political analyst based in Beirut. Thanks for being with us. What can you tell us about Khorasan?
Actually, I believe the American allegations are a little bit exaggerated regarding the Khorasan, because Khorasan is not an organization in a traditional way. It is a group of people were sent by Ayman al-Zawahiri, the head or the leader of Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan and Pakistan, into Syria in order to supervise and lead the operations of Jabhat al-Nusra or al-Nusra Front, the terrorist organization which is also listed on the American administration terror list. But these people came from Afghanistan in order to back up the operation of the good rebels of the American administration in Syria by giving them plans, the military plans to combat the Syrian army. However, this threat, as I said, is exaggerated for many reasons. First of all, Jabhat al-Nusra or this Khorasan were dramatically weakened after the rise of ISIS in Syria. Most of the members and the leadership of this group were either dead or defected to ISIS. So the real threat is ISIS and not Jabhat al-Nusra. However, the United States needs the legitimacy, or to add legitimacy to its operations into areas which is under the control of Jabhat al-Nusra and other affiliated Al-Qaeda groups in Syria.
Okay, we're also asking our audience this evening what they think about this new so-called imminent threat. Their comments will appear on the bottom of our screen throughout our conversation. I just want to confirm, you think that we're hearing about Khorasan only now to legitimize the fight against ISIS. Is that correct?
Actually, this Khorasan, we have to remember that there is a very important example that Jabhat al-Nusra itself released an American journalist only recently, and they were holding UNDOF soldiers, and they also released it without anything in return. This group was sending positive messages to the United States that they are not as radical as ISIS, and there is a margin for negotiations between the Americans and this group, because the war on ISIS was imminent, as the American administration declared, and those armed groups in Syria, most of them are Salafi jihadis, but they are not part of ISIS. We're trying to eliminate ISIS as well. So there was a mutual interest between the Americans and this group. And since the Obama administration doesn't want to send ground troops or boots on the ground in Syria, therefore they need to hire some mercenaries inside Syria in order to combat ISIS. But this Khorasan thing is a little bit suspicious, because I'm, as a Syrian activist and academic, observing all the situation in Syria. I never heard about the Khorasan thing only like 1 week ago. So if the Americans are aiming to conduct further bombing campaigns in certain areas in Syria, as I said, they need to add the legitimacy on it. So they are creating this kind of fear, or the media campaign against this Khorasan, in order to bomb more areas into Syria, and not only Raqqa and Abu Kamal and Deir ez-Zor, where ISIS is located now.
What role does Assad play in this, and why has Syria been so quiet about these strikes on its territory?
Actually, I disagree with the position of the Syrian government regarding the bombings in Syria, because the American administration didn't coordinate with the Syrian government. They only sent a letter to a third party, which was Iraq, that they are going to bomb some locations in Syria. The Syrian government believes that weakening ISIS is in strategic interest, in the strategic interest of the Syrian government and the Syrian army. However, we have to bear in our minds that the United States and Saudi Arabia are also preparing 5,000 mercenaries in Saudi Arabia, and also maybe Georgia is ready to host these mercenaries. They are training them in order to replace these extremist rebels who were moderate rebels 1 year ago. They became extremists, with another moderate rebels which will also become extremists in a later stage.
All right, Kevork Almasyan, academic and political analyst based in Beirut. Again, he's a Syrian activist with us in the Now tonight. Thanks so much.
According to the site Intelligence Monitoring Service, a Twitter account run by an Al-Qaeda member has said that the leader of the so-called Khorasan group was killed in a U.S. airstrike in Syria. Khorasan refers to members of the Nusra Front who have come from Afghanistan and Pakistan. And this announcement follows several days of uncertainty over whether he survived the raid. On Wednesday, a U.S. official said the United States believed Mohsin al-Fadli, a senior Al-Qaeda operative, had been killed in a strike a day earlier. Side did not name the jihadist who reported Fadli's death, but said he had trained under a close associate of the Al-Qaeda leader Ayman al-Zawahiri and had fought in the Afghanistan-Pakistan region before traveling to Syria.